How are you, mate?
Good, yeah. Disappointing, obviously, result, but heading to Rome tomorrow, and I've enjoyed trying to break down what went wrong for Ireland, but I think more importantly, what stands out is what went right for France. What a team! What a team they are. Beautiful to watch.
Let's get straight into that then, because I was going to just throw out one line and then we could go with it, just for the masses, if they clip anything up on social media. But here we go. Are Ireland not as good as we thought? I've been saying the best team in the world, one of the best teams in the world. Oh, he's rubbing his neck, he's rubbing his chin, he's thinking deeply.
We're not this version. This version has gone backwards, and I'm actually angry with myself. I actually tipped Ireland to win by a point, but I was factoring in. I thought Ireland would find another 20%, Jim, that we found in the past when those big games came up. 2 years ago, Ireland France was pretty much a Grand Slam decider, a phenomenal game, but we won by putting together a really, really solid performance across all aspects of the game. This Six Nations and in November, you've seen cracks in our game. The efficiency of the past, the paint by numbers that Wayne Smith spoke about, or Ian Foster spoke about post that quarterfinal in Paris. That hasn't been there. That hasn't been as effective. And whether I'm not sure whether we've decided to go away from that or we haven't been able to implement that. There's definitely been a shift tactically. We're kicking a lot more. We're using Prendergast's boot a lot more. We're not slaves to possession. But it just hasn't been clicking. I mean, against Wales, there was obvious cracks, but the results, papered over that. But we didn't get a bonus point, which, if you're the best team in the world, at the moment with this Welsh team, you go to Cardiff and you might be at your best, but you get a bonus point. Against England, we struggled for long periods. And a lot of that was down to England, but it was also some of it was down to us. In Scotland, we have to factor in, we were very, very good for the first block in Scotland, but then Scotland, even with a rearranged backline, kind of had us in the back foot for periods as well. So, yeah, it's there's a lot of self-reflection here at the moment and questions around where is our game. Leinster haven't won a European Cup for a while. Obviously, there's a strong chance to win one this year with R.G. Snyman and Jordy Barrett and Rabbi Slimani. But that's effectively the Irish team with three world-class players. And how does that affect Ireland in the future? And how does it affect the Irish provinces?
Yeah, there's loads to unpack with this, which is great because everyone's talking about it, right? And I think because it's Ireland, you can do. Because we've spoken about them as the best team in the world, and then they go to a World Cup and under-deliver at the quarter-final. They're one big moment, which would, from the outside, seem like the dream scenario to have France at home. And they were underwhelming for a number of reasons. When France are so much better than people gave them credit for. I picked them, and it isn't about me being an expert, but I'd seen enough in that French team to be like, if these fuckers click, no one's beating them. And the All Blacks know that, right? And we can go back to the World Cup and the game against South Africa. You think how good they were in parts of that quarter-final, but it just didn't all click. When it clicks, that team are unplayable. But do you think because Ireland are there or thereabouts, people are passing judgment because they underperformed? Is there an internal perception that they're a great team or that they're better than they are? Because people will be getting this, and there's a lot of hate that comes from the Irish supporters by when you pass judgment or you say, oh, they're not as good, or you're saying this 10 should be playing, or James Lowe shouldn't be playing for Ireland because there's a lot of tension, it feels, within Ireland. Why is that? Is that because the expectation is so high?
I think the expectation's so high, and then also a little bit of regret that we haven't done more, because I think this is a golden generation. We've had a golden generation for 10 years, Jim, and we've got to number one in the world, and we've won some Six Nations, and we won a Grand Slam. But that World Cup quarter-final hangs over us hangs very heavy on us. And then the fact that we haven't been winning Europe with a province for a while, and you've had those heartbreaks against La Rochelle and Toulouse, at the very highest level, and then you lose a game like that, which is set up for you, really. I mean, the emotional, I suppose, boost I thought we would get with the three lads playing their last home game, a couple of players playing their 50th game, the fact that it was a championship on the line. It really was, with the points difference France had coming into it, the fact that we hadn't got a bonus point against Wales, the fact that we let England get a bonus point, the fact that we needed to win. I know there's still a chance, but we needed to win, and we just didn't perform. And I think I think that sends a shock when you're used to being consistent, and you're lauded for your consistency. But then when you fall on a big day like that, like a World Cup quarterfinal, effectively it was kind of the first game we've had since that game in Paris where we kind of needed to close it out, if that makes sense, and we didn't. And then that obviously sends kind of shockwaves. It makes you think about where you're going. And I have to say, and this isn't an excuse, but I think it did show us how important Andy Farrell is to us, because I'm not saying technically, tactically, he could have won the game for us, but I've normally under him, we're at the right emotional pitch, and we had so many players who totally underperformed on Saturday, and there was an element of they weren't allowed to perform, but like if you were picking the Lions team from that game, a lot of those Irish players wouldn't be anywhere near the test team. But we have to believe on what our eyes have shown us over the last 2 years that they're very good rugby players, and they should be thereabouts to be Lions test team tourists. But the reality was, on a big day when there was a good opposition in front of them, a lot of them underperformed. Caelan Doris is probably the only Irish player who had an impact on the game, and that was from a defensive point of view. Attack wise, he was quite quiet, but he stood up in that first half and had 4 big turnovers. But overall, Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, Joe McCarthy, Ty Byrne, Josh Van der Fleer, Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw, Hugh Keenan, like top players, just didn't perform, and that's worrying from an Irish point of view. But I do think that Farrell, that rarely happened under Farrell. It happened in November against the All Blacks, but it rarely happened. Like even against New Zealand in the World Cup, yeah, we made errors, but lots of players played well and we performed. We just couldn't make up a deficit at the end. So it's lots of things that are being talked about. Our pathways being talked about. Is it too reliant on private schools? Probably is, but I don't think that's a bat to beat this private schools with. It's just to make us ask the question, well, why haven't we done anything else to actually harness the unbelievable athleticism that's in other sports and bring some of them to rugby union, when it's the only professional sport in Ireland, when you've had a team who have been up around the top of the world for the last 10 years. And our under-20s team this year, Jim, is very poor, right? So they're lads who were 10 years ago who you would think would be inspired by a successful national team.
Well, let's just wrap it up with how the table will look in your view. Shall I kind of tell you how I think you think it will look? So you're going to go France top. They'll beat Scotland at the weekend.
France, England. I think England beat Wales, and then we'll finish third.
Oh, third for Ireland.
I know.
Hey. Yeah.
Not good.